As your network automation practice evolves, so should your tools. Don't manage your collections of Ansible playbooks and Python scripts artisanally. Move up to Itential and load your automations onto a scalable platform your whole team can use. Visit itential.com to find out more. That's itential.com.
Welcome to Heavy Networking from the Packet Pushers. We're recording live from AutoCon 3 in Prague. We're taking the opportunity to collect real-life tales of network automation to inspire and inform you about what's possible. I'm Drew Connery-Murray, here with Ethan Banks. Our guests today are Dan Peachey and Vlad Skuba from Ayden. We're going to be talking about a firewall automation project they've been involved in. We're going to get into how they went from bash scripting to a self-service model for updating firewall policies. We're going to talk about business drivers for the project, the tools they're using, version control, and more. Dan and Vlad, welcome to the podcast, and just get us started, a brief introduction of who you are, what you do.
I'm Senior Network Automation Engineer. I've been with the company now for 2 years. I've been mainly focusing on automation for around the last 6 years. But previous to that, my background is more network engineering.
Okay.
I started network engineering around 2000. So yeah, I've had quite a long career in network engineering and then switched more to automation in the last few years.
And Vlad?
I'm actually product manager. I'm with Ayden for 2 years, but I spent whole my career in telecommunication, mostly service provider background. And as a product manager, I kind of make sure that network brings value to business, if you can say this.
Yeah, it should, yeah. So you guys work for a fintech. What can you just talk about what that means and sort of what environment you're working in?
I would say the main product is payments. So we're kind of a middleman for payments. Mm-hmm. So we have a bunch of merchants and we provide to them payment services through terminals in shops, restaurants, but also online as well. There's a bunch of other financial products around that as well. We have a banking license in some countries as well. It's a global business, so we have offices all over the world. Our infrastructure is fairly global as well. Mm-hmm. And maybe one of the interesting things on the infrastructure side is that we mostly run everything internally, so most of it's on-prem. We like to own as much of the stack as possible. That's kind of one of our selling points to our customers as well.
And so I'm guessing the major priorities are speed, availability, and security.
Yes, definitely availability and security. Resilience, I mean, if we're down, we're losing payments. Right. Transactions fail, that's a big problem. So, resilience is a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can only add that probably resiliency, security, and then speed.
Okay.
Because normally when you swipe your card, you want it to be fast, but it's too late. You're already paying. Right. But if you're not available, you may not be able to buy food or buy a hot dog for your kid in the stadium or things like that. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have some experience when doing payment card stuff too, and speed it mattered, but like you said, it's like if you got to wait a few seconds for the transaction to be approved or denied, whatever, fine, it is what it is. Plus, there's not a lot of data on the wire to do a credit card swipe. It's not like you're moving gigabits of data, through the LAN and the WAN. It's really small.
Yeah, I also not sure how much interesting it will be, but we actually connecting multiple schemas. There is not only Visa and MasterCard and credit cards. There is a VPay, local payments method in country. So Ayden is a middleman for all those, and we abstracting them in a single package for the merchants. That's
okay, right. So as a middleman, you're enabling your merchants to accept all kinds of esoteric payment methods, right? Like not just Visa, MasterCard. You do American Express over here. My card's been working great. Yeah.
I think right now there are maybe thousands of them even.
Yeah.
Like VPay, RuPay in India. There are all kinds of payment methods. Yeah.
So Dan, you said you've been doing automation for a while. Is that what brought you to this team and what brought you on board?
So previous to my current role, I was working for another company doing a kind of similar project to what I've been working on now for this company. It was, in the past, I like lots of network engineers, I've done my fair amount of kind of shell scripting and expect a little bit of Perl here and there. But it was around 6 years ago that I took up a project which was heavily Python-based, Django, building a similar kind of thing to what we're working on now with the security framework that we're building. So I kind of have some experience in that from my previous project. So yeah, after that project ended, I found that I really enjoyed the automation side of things a bit more than the network engineering, at least for now. I'll see how it goes. But yeah, then I kind of decided to carry on with network automation and took this role within Ayden as a fully dedicated automation engineer.
Now, you said Python, and then you said also Django came out of your mouth at the same time. But
Yeah.
I don't think most people are going to know Python, but maybe not Django?
Yeah. So Django is a Python-based web framework. If people know NetBox, that's what NetBox is using.
A web framework as in components that are going to help the presentation layer, what you're actually looking at on the screen?
Yeah, so it provides you kind of an abstraction on top of the database. So it gives you an easy way. So if you have, for example, a Postgres database behind it, you don't need to use SQL to communicate with it through Django. It has an ORM on top of it. So it gives you an easy way to query the data and put data into the database. It also allows you to build a whole kind of web UI framework around it as well, and an API. You don't necessarily need to use the web UI part of it, which actually in our project we're not. We use a different web UI. But yeah, you can build an API in front of a database around it, and it makes it quite easy to do that. And what's nice about it is it has a lot of components already baked into it to do with like role-based access control, authentication, all that kind of stuff. So it's quite easy to get going with it. Okay, you need to know some Python. Yeah, so yeah, you're not going to get away with. It's not low code, right? But it's one of the easier frameworks to get going with, I think, at least.
Everybody says it's easy, and then you start looking at it and realize you're a monkey looking at a helicopter going, I don't know what's happening right now.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about this firewall automation project? Like, sort of like, what problem were you trying to solve, or problems?
One of the interesting things about the way we do firewall management is that any team, or not any team, but many different teams can create firewall policies. Not just the networking team, or the requests don't just go to the networking team. So how it's been working in the past is that we had a bunch of scripts. So we were basically doing GitOps with a bunch of scripts. So people would submit their firewall rules in plain text into Git, raise a merge request, have that approved, and then the deployment part of that was very manual. You had to jump on a server, you had to run a bunch of scripts to actually deploy that to the servers and to the firewalls. One of the key problems there was that because the deployment wasn't automated, people wouldn't necessarily do their own deployments. They might wait for other people to do deployments. And that would mean when you come to do a deployment, you might have other people's changes in your deployment that you're doing. Then you have to go and find who actually made those changes to check that, okay, hey, is this okay? Can I push this? And it basically slowed everyone down. So I think that was one of the pain points.
So it was different teams wanting to make potentially different changes or conflicting changes to firewalls, and also just a number of changes piling up, and you had to reconcile all that.
Yeah, a lot of changes piling up. I think maybe we had 20 to 30 changes a day or more, even in merge requests coming into a repository, something like that. So yeah, the change frequency was high, and it was producing a lot of issues with people actually having to push the changes.
Right, and if those changes are manual, then there's also, fat fingering, keystroke issues.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
Well, why so high? I mean, do you have a lot of firewalls out there?
Because we're doing multiple levels of firewalling, this is also pushing to end hosts. So each host has basically their own firewall, mostly IP tables, because it's mostly Linux hosts.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense in a hurry now. Yeah. Okay, as opposed to a bunch of central firewalls that traffic's going through, which you also have, it sounds like, but also endpoint enforcement.
Yeah. So basically, if you want a flow from A to B, you might have to apply it to at least 2, maybe 3 different places to actually make that flow work end to end.
And are you on? You mentioned IP tables. Are you what other firewall platforms are? Or are you in a multi-vendor environment?
It's multi-vendor, yeah. But I think so. The idea behind the system that we've built is that it's relatively generic, so that we abstract away the actual definition of the data into a kind of higher level model, and then we have a translation layer, which means that we can take that data that's defined and then translate it to any type of firewall policy that we like. So the key one for us was IP tables, because that's what we have most of, but it can be applied to other firewall types as well. We have other vendors in the network as well.
Well, there are microsegmentation solutions out there that can do something similar. Why did you guys build your own thing in-house?
I think we did talk to some vendors, at least one vendor, which required you to have their vendor everywhere, which we don't. We're multi-vendor, so we have at least 3 vendors probably on the network side. That ruled out that solution. We did look around the market. We didn't find anything that would cover all of our use cases. Basically, we kind of wanted, at least for part of our infrastructure, to have an agent where we could push out policy to end hosts. We didn't come across anything that would solve all of these challenges that we had. And we also had things around like gradual deployments, not wanting to blast out policy everywhere in one go. Mm-hmm. So when we coupled in all of these kind of use cases that we had, we didn't find anything on the market that was kind of satisfy all of our requirements. Hence, we started to look at building our own custom thing in-house.
Yeah, just to add to this, I think there are really 2 key things which we were looking and were not able to find. Is one, we wanted to remove complexity from the end user who put in the firewall rules. So you kind of need to understand what you're doing, and then you will need to get approval and review, etc. But you don't need to be a network engineer, and you don't need to know topology of the network to make sure that all thousands of your enforcement points are updated. And the second, there was a set of really niche requirements when we needed to have a gradual rollout. So we're releasing firewall policies like people release an application. So we're compiling them for the network, and then we're rolling it out on 1 enforcement point, then waiting, doubling an amount, then 2, then waiting, then 4, then waiting, etc., until your rollout is complete. And I don't think that anyone is actually doing it like this. At least we didn't manage to find it. But you're right. Generally, there are solutions on the market which you can use as a network team. Yeah.
And that's what you led with. You did look for one before you decided, okay, we're going to own this, and we're going to build a team internally to do it. Yeah. Okay. So Dan, it sounds like the team, did it start with you, or did you come into an existing team?
When I joined around just over 2 years ago, there was one other guy who'd been working in the engineering team, network engineering. I guess he'd been doing more of the automation stuff. And at that point, they decided to kind of make a small squad to focus on automation. So when I joined, it was me and one other guy and a team lead. And after maybe 6 months or a bit more, as we started to develop this whole new project, we realized that we needed to take on more people. The way we were looking at things, doing something very custom, in-house, fully Python-based, we had some of the skills, but it was kind of bigger than just the people that we had. So we started to look at taking on more, or someone at least from a software engineering, or more of a software engineering background, who could kind of take some of the more complex things that we were doing.
So you felt like you needed a developer to be part of the team, essentially?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would say I've developed some good developer skills, but I still feel like I'm more on the network engineering side. I wouldn't really call myself a senior developer yet. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel like I could maybe handle all of this myself. And the other guy as well was probably in a similar situation to me. I think we really needed some software engineering help.
Can you dig into that a bit? Because part of that sounds like imposter syndrome, but then part of that sounds like, no, actually, there's some specific things that I thought a senior developer could bring to the table that I didn't have experience with.
Yeah, actually, one thing to mention is that we were fortunate in some ways that we're a fintech company, but the company is like at least half software developers. So we were able to lean on other parts of the company, and we borrowed a guy for 6 months maybe, or a bit less, to help us bootstrap the project. He was coming from a pure developer background, very, very good Python developer. So I had come from working on a Django project previously. So I thought that I knew quite well Django and Python, but then he came in and made some quite complex stuff, which was a bit above my head. And then I kind of realized, right, okay, this is a level above maybe what I can handle and our team can handle right now. So we need some more expertise around this.
Just to add to this, I think that one of the really business drivers behind it is we would like network to be embedded as a part of a platform for developers and other teams. And it's great when you build in Ansible playbooks, but when you start exposing complexity outside, you need to build models and abstractions, which should be easy for people to consume. And that's where the problem is. That's where you need system thinking, how you need to step outside of networking just to enable this. And that's what we want. We want networking to be invisible. We don't want to be in the people's way. We want, like, you provision a server, network appears, switch port configures, but your job is have a server. You don't want to deal with the rest.
Well, it's a very cloud approach.
Yes.
Is more how that feels. Like you're provisioning part of the network as a part of the larger IT service that you're deploying, and the network is just, as you said, you want it to be invisible. Yeah, it needs to do the things. It's got to be, a part of a VLAN or have an access list applied or whatever it is, and you don't want anyone to care that just happened.
It's exactly what we're trying to do. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And now a brief sponsor message from Itential. If you're like me, your network automation skill set is an evolving one. You've probably done some Ansible and Python work and you've had some quick wins, but now you're getting to that point where you want other people in your team to use the automations that you've built. They're sort of okay with Ansible, right? They're definitely not 100%, but they're okay. However, they do not want to figure out Python, and they can't even manage the library dependencies. Most of the folks on your team, what do they want? They want you to give them a thing that they can run and it just works. And if it doesn't, any network task requiring automation comes back to your queue. I call this the platform problem. You need a platform that the whole team can use to run automations without them having to know anything about maintaining a Python environment or even how to run an Ansible playbook. And this is the service Itential provides across their product portfolio. You've created a bunch of network automations. All right, now move them from your laptop into a repository and then let Itential execute them in a scalable, secure way that abstracts details from people that don't need to know, while giving access to every nuance for those people that do need to know, people like you. Itential puts you on the road to self-service network automation, allowing anyone you like to run your automation, all while integrating with all the other systems that your organization runs. And to me, this is the ultimate destination for network automation systems, self-service. To find out more about Itential's products and how they help you build an automation platform, visit itential.com. You can test drive Itential free for 30 days. That is itential.com.
So how does the service that you've built, it feels like on the one hand you've got developers that are interacting with the service to deploy something. On the other hand, you're talking about there's a web UI that people, end users, can consume the service this way and get Firewall services deployed. So can you talk about how the service you've built is interacted with?
So there's, I guess you can put it into two parts. So there's a backend part, which is based on Python, Django. We're using the Django Ninja API framework. We heavily utilize Pydantic models to do all of the API modeling.
What is a Pydantic model?
So Pydantic is a Python library. I think it's gaining quite some traction in the community at the moment for doing modeling and schemas. So we basically build our APIs around that. It makes it super nice to and easy to build them. And it gives you all the validation, data kind of integrity, that kind of stuff. So that's the back-end part of it. And there's a product called Backstage, which was developed by Spotify. It's a kind of self-service portal type product where you can build plugins for it. So it's basically a web UI. And it allows you to build plugins for it where you can make a UI and let your internal developers and use it as a self-service portal, basically. So again, that part of the platform, we had to borrow some people from other parts of the company to help us bootstrap that. So we were quite lucky in that sense. But once that's now built, we are mainly focusing on the backend side. So within our team, we're more focused on the kind of Python API backend side of things.
I think we set a few ground rules before doing all this thing. So the system is API first. We built a UI for people to consume it, but this decision was made simply to make it easier to people to interact with, because in firewall rules there are many-to-many relations, IP related to rule, then source to destination, etc., etc. In the UI, it's simpler to navigate when you have more than 100 rules. We have thousands of them. That's why, but everything people do in the UI is API-based. Then the next requirement was we should be able to roll back to any period of time and any state. And that's when we ended up implementing our own Git-like on top of a database.
Okay.
And yeah, gradual rollout was the third cornerstone of the implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, we went through a kind of decision-making process around should we do this in a database, right? The Git versus database thing. Yeah, we went through quite some kind of decisions on that. Some people don't like the UI. Some people don't like not having, kind of Git-based text files to do this. But yeah, in the end, we went with a database. What we really like is the fact with a database, when you have relational data, you get this kind of immediate feedback loop of whether you can define something as you want. So, you go and make a firewall rule, for example. You get drop-down boxes for the relational data to that firewall rule. You're constrained to only use the options in that drop-down. Whereas if you have this based in Git, you might define something in one file, go and define it somewhere else, do a copy-paste error. You're not going to find out if that's a problem until you commit it to the repo, have a pipeline run, and it fails because you have some error in it. With a database, you don't have that. You get that kind of immediate feedback. So for us, that was really a key thing. I think that we can enable people to do this stuff super quick because we can constrain them from not making as many errors as they might do if they're doing this in Git.
Okay. So, and you're storing the firewall rules in a database?
Yes. Yeah. The abstracted high-level firewall rules.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So basically from that produce artifacts for the underlying firewalls, but those can change based on the changes to the high-level data. Yeah.
But the elements that somebody who wants a firewall rule change implemented, they've got essentially a small set of fields that they can operate within to get point A to B connected,
Yep.
which gives you a little bit more control and reduces concerns about opening or closing things that shouldn't be opened or closed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the easiest way to think is as a compiler.
Yeah.
You put in high-level definitions, and we compile to certain implementation, and then we can embed or enhance what you put with, I don't know, if you want an APS or you want some inspections, etc.
Yeah.
But
That intelligence to take these sort of high-level inputs and turn that into the syntax for specific firewall languages, how did that middle layer, how did you develop that yourself? Did you buy that? Where did that come from?
We developed that ourselves, and I'm not going to lie, it ended up being very complex.
I can imagine. Yeah.
One of the really complex things is to understand what's changed in the system, because you have this relational data, and you might say add a prefix to, because we have a hierarchical kind of relational data where we can say, okay, well, this prefix can be a source and this destination can be a prefix as well. And we have to then figure out what IP addresses are part of that prefix, and therefore what hosts do we need to deploy these firewall rules on. So actually figuring out what the impact is of a change in the higher level data, what host does that impact on the lower end, is really tricky. Yeah, it got quite complex. We make it work, we can manage it, but yeah, this is one of the most complex parts of it, I think.
Okay.
Graphs? Did you get into graph theory to figure it out?
Yeah, but this is another thing, I guess. When we started this a bit less than 2 years ago, InfraHub was not on the market then. I think Nautobot had done something with version control, with Dolt, but they seem to have kind of stopped it. NetBox had done something experimental in terms of version control. So we basically wanted version control as one of the key things, plus a way to have this high-level abstraction and figure out from the change, what does it impact? I think at that time, these things were not on the market. So we decided to completely build it ourselves, borrowing some stuff from open source here and there. 2 years later, things have changed. Something like InfraHub could well be a good solution for this because it has GraphDB rights, and I think it handles all of this impacts kind of logic within the product itself. So, yeah, I don't know. If we were to look at it again today, I think we have more options. But again, we have a lot of custom stuff built on top of it, purely for our use cases. So I expect that if we use something like InfraHub, we'd still need to build a lot of custom logic around it anyway.
So the effort that you have to put into maintaining this custom piece of software that you've written, how does that compare to the original problem you were trying to solve in terms of work and capacity and ability to execute changes quickly and reliably?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we have now a dedicated team of 5 people managing this, plus general network automation. But we are enabling people we are reducing a lot of toil, I think, around the company. So,
do you have like a metric that you have internally to say whether this project is a success or not? Or
we do. We're actually measuring what is called NPS score. So we're quarterly asking all our customers about, are you happy with what we built? And actually, in a month, I will be able to answer it. But one of the feedbacks I got just in a coffee corner is the guy who is a database engineer. He was like, Vlad, I recently, some application needed access to our databases. And like a week ago, I spent full working day just applying firewall policies, etc. Now it takes me like an hour. So
okay, that's pretty good.
If you will multiply it for hundreds of people,
yeah.
That's a lot of time and money, and actually people doing what they're supposed to do and not managing firewall rules.
Yeah, I think also the other thing to say about it is the previous solution had been there for maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe more, and not had much love, I guess. And yeah, it was kind of one of those solutions that works, but if something goes wrong, no one wants to touch it. So, it was building up a lot of legacy technical debt. So yeah, if we'd have had to try and keep that going, we could have, but it would have just bit us even more eventually, I think.
I actually think that we missed one part of the solution which we actually built, because our tool, it also discovers the network topology continuously.
Okay.
And we integrated with few databases in the company, one of them Puppet database, so we know which AP lives everywhere, and that's how we know where which rule needs to live.
Oh yeah, you mentioned there's an agent component as well?
Yeah, so part of the solution is we have a Python-based agent which sits on the end server, and it's basically responsible for grabbing the rules, the new rules, and deploying that to the host. And it's also hooked into Prometheus as well, so we can get a bunch of metrics from it. So we know things like, did the last apply, did it fail or was it successful? What version of the config is it on? A bunch of different metrics like this. So that gives us quite some control around the visibility that we have of this policy on the end host, which is also, super nice.
Although sometimes people react poorly to agents because it's also now much more software to manage and monitor and upgrade. How did you decide, it's still worth it?
Yeah, I mean, we build some of our own packages internally anyway, so we had some of this infrastructure kind of existing that we can package things in RPM packages and push them out. We use Puppet, so we have various kind of ways of automating this on the system side. I guess because we had that already in the ground mostly, then we were fairly comfortable that we could probably do this. In the start, we thought this agent would be super simple. Over time, it grew a bit more in complexity, so maybe we didn't kind of forecast that at first, but it has given us like way more visibility into what's going on, which is really good.
I think we ended up being like an internal provider of software. So we have OSs we're supporting, we have a way to release it, we're fully responsible for life cycle of this piece of software, testing, etc. That also come with a lot of overhead. Like we basically have 3 versions of the tool. One is production, another is development and staging, and we're going over all this release lifecycle because blast radius can be surprisingly impressive.
So how do you guys deal with scale as you're a fintech, and the presumption is you're going to grow. You're going to bring in more merchants. You're going to bring on more back-end networks to authorize against. And you're just going to have more volume over time, endpoints to support and so on. Is this system designed with that in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can't say exactly how many hosts we're supporting now, but it's many thousand, right? It's going to grow. The way we do it at the moment is we use internal, our data storage for the rules is internal S3 clusters, and we have those in many different DCs. So we can scale that quite well. If we need to add way more hosts, we can just add more S3 kind of endpoints where we can store the artifacts. So I think in terms of scale, it should be pretty good. And the kind of control plane side of it, the scale of that is basically the number of users. So at the moment, that's fairly static. We have a fairly kind of predefined number of users that are making rules there. So I think we can scale that fairly easily. It's also running in Kubernetes, so we can
throw more worker nodes at the
bottom. We can throw more replicas at it, and it should be good. So
probably if someone would be there to repeat this, your biggest constraint is the database, because every time we have in a branch or revision set, how they call it, you have a copy of a database. And if you have 20 branches, it can grow, especially if database is big. So you need to pay attention, scaling that, I guess. But as soon as you can figure it out, it should scale.
You mentioned a lot of back-end components that you're dealing with, Python and Django and Backstage and so on. There's some other pieces that I don't think we've talked about yet. One of them is Ansible, I think. We mentioned before we hit the record button. What are you doing with Ansible?
Yeah, so I guess this project you could kind of consider it a bit separate to although it's firewall policy. At the moment, it's mostly focused around Linux hosts. It will include other firewalls at some point. We use Ansible heavily for network configuration. So we have many leaf spine fabrics in our DCs. And most of our network configuration is stored in YAML files in Git. We grab some stuff from NetBox, so we have inventory in NetBox, and we're getting some of the data from there. That's kind of our next project, I guess, is like, what do we do with this automation stack that we have, which has lots of YAML files.
But this does feel, is it completely separate from the firewall policy management
I would say it's pretty much completely separate. Yeah.
Okay.
I think for now it is, but the problem we will need to figure out is, and actually we're trying to, how to deliver changes to as many implementations as we can. And I guess that's true. Ansible is now standalone, but we will need to start merging them.
Well, you're describing dealing with multiple leaf spine fabrics and using Ansible and NetBox to deal with that. The firewall policy management component is like an application that would ride on top of that infrastructure, but they're not directly tied, is at least in my mind, the way I'm thinking about it. But Vlad, you're nodding your head like, yeah, but we got this plan.
I'm just trying to, say it in a way that it will be understandable. I guess Ansible for us is a way to deliver configuration, but in order to compile configuration, there are many things should happen. For example, one of the workflows we have is a server provisioning. And part of that is people put in their magic YAML to Puppet, and they define in server configuration. So how it pops up on a switch if you don't want people to configure the switch. So we have a piece of software which looks at the Puppet, he understands which VLANs are there, what should I put. And for now, we basically have another daemon who goes and configures the fabric. But I think long term, we don't want to be there. So we're trying to figure out a unified way of compiling changes and delivering them to the network, if you're following me what I mean. Yeah. We don't want them to be atomic and chaotic, because then amount of dependencies, it multiplies quickly. So for example, I have a VLAN on a port, but is a VLAN on a VPN fabric? How to am I missing communities?
Yeah, and I guess we have, at the moment, we have various use cases for our kind of internal customers. For example, requesting a network and a VLAN and deploying that to the network. That's quite manual at the moment, because it would usually come in as a ticket, and then someone would update NetBox, and there'd be some certain updates to YAML files in Git, and then deployed through Ansible. So I think the thing we're kind of grappling with next is how could we automate this end to end? Either completely automated from the customer just requesting something like self-service, possibly with one step in the middle where someone just hits a button, says, yeah, approve, that's good. So there's kind of BAU changes, low risk, that right now are quite manual. I would say that's probably our next thing that we need to look at, try and reduce the toil there.
And then if you will do one step ahead of that, is you have, to give you an example, and this is really visionary for us, but think about automatic scaling in AWS. Actually, for this to happen, you need to orchestrate firewall rules, switch configuration, provision of a server, etc., and that's what we're aiming. We want all these pieces to work together so you can have a platform experience.
But again, you're going to build it in-house, you're thinking. You're not looking at a vendor that could, because again, there's a bunch of vendor solutions in that space. Some that are multi-vendor, and that's what they're designed for. So you can have a service catalog that you're deploying out to your customers. Folks like Anuta Networks come to mind. They've been doing that for a long time, and others. But you're nodding your heads like, yeah, we're aware of those. But
it's just a mirror of conversations we have. I think we will end up with some vendor solutions, because simply to build this all in-house, it's really complex. I don't think it's feasible for the even company of our size, but there will be some custom-built pieces, simply because there is a certain business logic, certain way of doing things, which we would like to be like we doing it. Certain business logic, I guess, that's how it's called.
Well, it's the same. Everybody's got this story where there's this commonality that all networks have. We're all doing VLANs and IP and VRFs and whatever they are. There's these core functions. But because everyone's network has unique business requirements, it's like, and there is no like out-of-the-box solution you just go buy. No matter what, even if you invest in a platform from a vendor, you're going to put a significant amount of time into customizing it for your specific requirements that you have to deliver for your environment. And so the choice becomes, I'm building something internally. How much of it am I going to build internally versus how much of it can I outsource and lean into the vendor to supply a bunch of bits and foundation for me that I don't want to have to deal with myself? And the answer is, what's right for you? It depends. It seems like it depends massively.
It is. I also think that the difference for us is we're not greenfield. We already have pieces of what we developed. Yes, they are a little bit disconnected and they solving a niche problems, but we already have them and they working really good for us.
I think for me, actually, that's what makes this space so interesting at the moment, network automation, because I think I see outside of the hyperscalers who have a lot of this figured out, right? The rest of us are trying to build these frameworks. We all have our own use cases and our own business requirements. Some of them are common, some of them not so much. So people are trying to put together these kind of frameworks that can be parts of vendor solutions, parts kind of open source, custom built. And there's kind of no set rule around how to do this, which on the one hand is a bit frustrating sometimes. On the other hand is interesting, right? Because we have all these problems to figure out. And I see people working together to try and figure these things out and come with good solutions. So. Mm-hmm. And I see in the automation forum that people are trying to figure out a kind of reference framework as well.
I was going to ask you about that, if you paid much attention to that development, if you had any thoughts.
I haven't, to be honest, other than dipping into the Slack channel now and again. I've not been following it. I'm looking forward to them coming with a nice recommendation at the end of it.
Okay, you're seeing the need, and you're invested or interested in the
I'm
outcome.
interested in it, at some point maybe I can, have some input to it, but up to now I'm just kind of loosely following it. But I think it's a great, it's a great thing that they're trying to do.
I've been on a lot of those meetings, and just getting definitions agreed upon has been very difficult. So it is a work in progress, but I think it's valuable work, and those conversations need to be had. Yeah,
I think probably many businesses are having similar conversations to us around this, that are trying to do network automation more than just some scripts and Ansible, trying to take it that kind of step further and really build a proper framework around it.
Well, I guess maybe this is sort of two splitting hairs, but where does network automation stop and sort of full software development begin? Because it sounds like you've kind of blurred that. Frankly, you've just built a software product.
Yeah, I think there's some line, I guess, at some point where you're having to really build software. You're not just scripting anymore. You're really building software, and you need to have all of these kind of software development processes around it to have a maintainable code base. And then I think you really benefit from someone who has this software engineering background, who's built these things from scratch, that can come in and lay the groundwork for it, and kind of, maybe help the rest of, if the other guys in the team have come from a more network engineering background. It's great to have these people there that you can learn from as well, that they can teach you how, okay, this is actually how you develop software. This is how you do things properly, maintainable. I think that helps a lot. Yeah, if you're mostly kind of maintaining individual scripts that do certain things, maybe you don't need that. But once you start building things like, for example, a big Django project, internal project, then probably you benefit highly from some software engineering.
I'm curious, you have a foot sort of in both worlds, the development world and the networking world, and it seems like a lot of the messaging, to my perception, is that network engineers need to take on more of like development skills. Do you see anything that needs to go the other way, that things that we know in networking that could be beneficial to the folks on the development side?
So I guess I had in my previous project, I was in an interesting position where I was developing a similar kind of project based around Django and Python, but I was doing some of the development myself, but I was more managing a small team of developers that were outsourced into us. So we had 3 developers from a separate outsource company. And I was really kind of bridging the gap between network engineering and software engineering and translating to them, mostly in pseudocode a lot of the time, please make this, and just giving them some kind of guardrails around what to do. And it worked fine, actually. They didn't really understand much about networking at all. And I think after the 3 years of the project, they probably didn't understand much more about it. But I don't know. It's hard to say. It really depends what you're working on. Where you have this purely kind of software project that in the end does something on the network. I'm not really sure software engineers really need to understand heavily about it.
But it needs to be made consumable for them with guardrails.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In talking to various network operating system vendors and so on, we've discovered that, there's a lot of software engineers that work for Cisco and Juniper and Arista, and they don't necessarily know much about networking as such. Many of them do, but a lot of them don't, which really shocked me when I first realized that. Then I started thinking about it. It's like, well, no, they're delivering a software product. They know code and how to deliver that in a solid way, and they don't necessarily need to understand, or they understand networking from a very different point of view because they're worried about the minutia of a routing protocol, for example, and how to deliver that code, but they don't have the big picture of how that's going to be deployed on a massive network for a service provider or a fintech or an enterprise. And so they just think about it in ways that you're like, we're not talking the same language, but we are. It's so weird. There's this disconnect sometimes, but it's okay. At the end of the day, you end up with a workable product.
Yeah. I think it's probably, depending on what you're working on, it's more, you have to get the team kind of the skills within the team correct, right? I don't think you necessarily have to have someone that has network engineering background and then is kind of shifted into software engineering. You can have a software engineer working with someone with a network engineering background that just understands how to work with the software engineer and describe what you need and make the requirements clear, this kind of stuff, right? So
and that's it. If you can learn to speak each other's language, that's very helpful. But there's no reason that you as a network engineer need to deeply understand the software engineering domain, but it helps, the more you can speak the lingo, the more it helps, and vice versa, as that software engineer understands, especially if they're dedicated to your team from a NetOps perspective and can speak the language of network engineering. It helps, but isn't strictly required. You just need to be able to explain to each other what's going on and how to make things work.
Yeah, I also think like our position is maybe not very common, that we're doing this fully kind of custom in-house thing, and we really need some software engineering experience. I think network engineers with some good scripting and software experience can go a long way, right? Where you can do a lot of the things that we usually need to do on the network in terms of automation now, not necessarily with software engineering skills in the team. But when you kind of take that step further and you fully go with something custom in-house, then at some point I think you're going to find you need someone with that kind of background.
It's funny, you were talking earlier how you brought software engineers who really understood. It's like, I know Python and Django, and then you worked with a software engineer that really knew it, and you're like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we can all write a script and so on, but if it came to, I need an adult in the room that knows how to manage the code and deal with version control and all that stuff.
I think I saw that from my previous project, actually, that I was actually doing less of the development, the actual Python code. I was more, let's say, higher level and describing to the software engineers what to do. So I learned from them how they do things, and I saw what I'd been doing, which was mostly scripting up to that point, was quite different to what they were doing. And so I think at that point I had the realization that, okay, this is, someone who's worked as a software engineer purely for 10 years, as a senior. I'm not that level. So I could become that level maybe if I do 10 years pure software engineering, then but I was not at that point at that level. So.
On the other hand, I think what networking can learn from having and working with software engineer is how to organize your code, the best practices. You will be surprised how small team, how far it can get these days without being a software developer, where we really benefited from having really one guy at the beginning is how to make it scalable. You ask this question, right? That's where you really need someone to think in advance how the thing should look like if it's barely complex. Because otherwise you will hit the wall at some moment and it's going to be very painful.
All right, I assume there's probably many more hours of conversation here, but we do need to wrap. So if folks want to find out more from you about the project or just connect with you online, are you on LinkedIn? Are you social? Dan, where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Dan Peachey, or I'm also on this Network Automation Forum Slack group as well.
Okay.
DPeach. So
DPeach, okay.
You can poke me there. Yeah.
All right. Vlad, how about you?
The same. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn. I think I left majority of other ways of communicating. And Slack, you can find me there after con.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Vlad, for joining us and telling us about this project and hopefully giving people some ideas about things they could be doing. And thanks to you for listening for today's Heavy Networking. If you have topics you want us to cover or comments about this episode, you can send them to us at packetpushers.net/follow-up, and we really do appreciate it, and we try to respond. And please do all the other things. We have merch at store.packetpushers.net. You can like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends. There's the Network Automation Forum Slack group. There's also the Packet Pushers Slack group. That's at packetpushers.net/community. We also have a growing YouTube channel. You can watch our podcast if you want to do that. You can also see Ethan labbing and trying stuff and doing things in real time. You can follow us on LinkedIn. All those things help us keep going to do what we need to do in this world of fractured attention. Last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.